This is truly a week where everybody's working on a deadline. You see the clock. EJ made reference to it earlier, and all the teams are very mindful of that. We welcome in Dave Pagnotta to talk about all the various scenarios that people are discussing. We start with Dave Hackstall. Said Alex Wennberg held out of morning skate, not available because of, and I quote, trade-related issues. What's the latest you're hearing?
Yeah, it begins. Guys are now getting held out of the lineup ahead of the deadline. It was a big theme last year. There have been a number of teams that have been interested in Alex Wennberg. Boston, the New York Rangers, Colorado, Carolina, just a few of them that have been expressing interest in Wennberg for some time. And he's a pending unrestricted free agent. They explored the possibility of an extension. Clearly, that hasn't gotten anywhere on this front. So the expectation now is that he will be traded in the not-too-distant future. Obviously, trade discussions with Ron Francis Sergian have picked up, and that's one of the reasons why he's being held out of the lineup tonight in Calgary. Usually, we get word of this closer to game time, but this was announced right after the skate this morning. So there has certainly been traction on this front. It's just a matter now of which team gets to the finish line with Seattle.
Dave, as EJ pointed out, the Boston Bruins 4-4-5 since the All-Star break. We all know deadline this Friday. How likely are we to see the Bruins make some moves before the deadline?
They'd like to, and if they can add up front, that's certainly, I mean, they're exploring every area, like a lot of top contenders. They're exploring the blue line, they're exploring the opportunity to bring in somebody in their top six, especially at the center position. As I mentioned, Wennberg, a guy that has been a target for them. But anything that they do of impact is going to have to result in somebody moving out of the lineup. And Jake DeBrusk is a player whose name is out there. They've been quietly kind of shopping him right now to see what options could be available. They explored contract negotiations. That's kind of cooled down a little bit. But he's got a $4 million cap hit. And if they could free up some space, he's a guy that may be a casualty of the salary cap. There's been a lot of talk of Linus Ullmark as well, although I don't really get the sense anything is close on that front, and Boston's more likely to keep him. So if the body does move out, it's more likely to be Jake DeBrusk and his $4 million clip. Again, they'd like to make an addition up front. They've been expressing interest in Noah Hanifin in Calgary. It's going to take some, if you want to make a big move, you're going to have to move somebody out. DeBrusk seems to be one of the potential candidates for that.
Staying in the Eastern Conference, the Penguins expected to be big sellers during this trade deadline period. Who do you think will be on the move from Pittsburgh's roster?
Other than the big boys, you name it. They're listening on pretty much everyone. I'll get to Jake Guentzel in a second, but outside of him, you have Ricard Raquel, you have Riley Smith, you have Marcus Pettersson, Lars Eller, Alex Nedeljkovic, and so on and so on. A lot of teams have been calling about these players to understand what the interest level is in Pittsburgh moving them and what type of deal that they can potentially consummate here involving some of their veteran pieces. These guys, all of them with term on their contract except for Jake Guentzel. And with respect to Guentzel, I'm told right before jumping on here that from a source very close to the team that the plan now is to move him. That is the expectation and the plan out of Pittsburgh. Jake Guentzel, expectation now, he will be traded ahead of the deadline. They don't really have much of a choice at this stage. They tried to wait as long as they could. He's expected to come off LTIR on March 10th. From what I'm hearing, he's progressed well. He's ready to go. But the expectation now, the next game he will play is likely to be in a different uniform. The asking price for Jake Guentzel, a first-round pick, a top-tier prospect who's either ready to make the jump in the NHL or already has made that jump, and a third asset. That first-round pick could be a variation of another asset that's equivalent value. But that's just how expensive the price tag is for Jake Guentzel. Again, the expectation now, he definitely will be moved ahead of the deadline.
Wow. And we know just over the years how valuable he's been playing with number 87. From 87 to 97, the Oilers. Can you see them making any trades to bolster their roster?
They want to. Kenny Holland is looking at another team similar to Boston. Make an ad up front, make an ad on the blue line. They'd like to make at least one on both sides. Guentzel is a target of the Edmonton Oilers. You add Vancouver to the mix, Vegas to the mix, a few other teams as well. But the Edmonton Oilers, much like the Bruins and much like some of their other counterparts that are right up there against the salary cap, money in means money out. They have three players right now that they have spoken to teams about the potential of moving them out on this roster. You have it up there. Warren Fogle, Cody Ceci, Brett Kulak, the primary guys that may have to move in order to bring somebody in. We know Philip Broberg is available. They've tried to find a new home for Jack Campbell to free up some cap space. Hasn't really been an option for them to this point. You had that first-round pick up there. they are willing to move that first-round pick in the right deal along with Broberg. So they want to add up front. They want to bring in somebody who can help provide some supplemental scoring for this club, as well as, if they can, bring in somebody in that bottom six to help stabilize things on a two-way side of things. Other than that, the blue line, another priority. They've looked at options. They've looked at Sean Walker in Philadelphia. They've looked at a few others to potentially add to that back end. Edmonton should be, if everything works out for them, very busy over these next, just under now, 4 days to the deadline.
Understood. Keeping it north of the border, Jakob Chychrun, 1 more year left on his contract. What are you hearing about his future in a Sens uniform?
It's questionable. Very, very questionable right now. There are teams that have re-engaged in trade discussions with Ottawa about Gensel and what may happen there. Those talks really started to pick up towards the end of January, when we started to hear that his name was out there again. Teams were calling, Ottawa was listening, and they were not telling teams that he is untouchable, because he's not. They are still listening. And with 1 more year left on his deal, some teams are evaluating this as a potential to add for 2 playoff runs and then hope to potentially sign him beyond his year next year. His progression has dipped a little bit this season, but a lot of teams still very much on pace. Like, he's still there. He's still on pace for good numbers. But his overall production dipped a little bit. But still, a lot of teams with a lot of interest in adding this player. Now, I should mention, if they do make a move involving Jakob Chychrun, this is a hockey trade. They're moving talent for talent. They're not shipping him out for picks and assets. They want to make sure that if they're moving out that player, they're bringing somebody in that can step into the lineup right away.
My hope is that the teams who make moves make them as impactful as your pocket square. That's outstanding. Thanks for joining us.
Got it. Thank you.